The Zephyrian High Command had grown complacent in their dominance over the galaxy's outer rim. For 3 centuries, their crystalline ships had swept through star systems like a plague, consuming worlds and enslaving species with methodical precision. The blue-skinned humanoids took pride in their technological superiority and tactical brilliance. No species had ever successfully resisted their expansion for more than a few months. Admiral Kethvar stood before the holographic display in his flagship's command center, studying the latest intelligence reports from the Sol system. The humans had been remarkably stubborn, lasting nearly 2 years against the Zephyrian war machine. Most species surrendered after witnessing a single demonstration of their planet-cracking weaponry. The humans had witnessed 12 such demonstrations and continued fighting. "Admiral," came the voice of his intelligence officer, Commander ZYXthel. "We've intercepted another human military transmission. The encryption is primitive, but the content is concerning." Kethvar turned his attention to the younger officer. "Concerning how? Are they finally ready to surrender?" "No, sir. They're requesting immediate evacuation of all civilian populations from the contested worlds. The transmission specifically mentions something called human special forces being deployed for the first time." ZYXthel paused, his scaled brow furrowing. "Our analysts believe this represents an escalation in their military response." The Admiral's laugh echoed through the command center. "Special forces? We've been fighting their best soldiers for 2 years. What could possibly be more dangerous than what we've already faced?" The answer came 3 days later. The Zephyrian 47th Fleet was conducting a routine orbital bombardment of New Geneva, a human agricultural colony that had refused to surrender despite losing 80% of its defensive installations. The planet's surface was scarred with craters from previous bombardments, yet the humans continued to launch desperate counterattacks from hidden bunkers. Captain Vorthen was monitoring the bombardment from his destroyer when his sensors officer suddenly straightened. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple small craft approaching from the asteroid belt. Configuration unknown. Pirates trying to salvage the wreckage?" Vorthen mused. "Lock onto them and prepare to fire. We can't have scavengers interfering with our operation." But the approaching craft didn't behave like desperate scavengers. They moved with purpose, using the asteroid field's natural cover to mask their approach. As they drew closer, the Zephyrian sensors revealed sleek, angular vessels unlike anything in their database of human military craft. "Captain," the weapons officer called out, "those ships are powering weapons systems. Energy signatures are unusual." The first sign that something was different came when the human craft opened fire. Instead of the primitive kinetic projectiles or basic energy weapons the Zephyrians had grown accustomed to, these new ships unleashed focused beams of exotic matter that simply passed through their energy shields as if they didn't exist. The beams struck Vorthen's destroyer and began eating through the hull at a molecular level. "Shields are ineffective," the defense coordinator shouted over the alarm klaxons. "Hull integrity failing on decks 7 through 12. Vorthen gripped his command chair as his ship shuddered under the assault. "Return fire. All weapons." The destroyer's advanced plasma cannons responded, sending streams of superheated energy toward the attacking vessels. The human ships didn't even attempt to dodge. Instead, they seemed to phase partially out of normal spacetime, allowing the plasma to pass harmlessly through them before rematerializing to continue their attack. "What in the void are these things?" Vorthen demanded as another section of his ship was consumed by the strange weapon fire. The answer came in the form of a transmission that bypassed their communications entirely, appearing directly in the neural interfaces of every Zephyrian on the ship. The voice was human, but it carried undertones that seemed to vibrate in dimensions their minds couldn't fully process. "Zephyrian vessel, this is Ghost Squadron of Earth Special Forces. You have 30 seconds to cease bombardment operations and withdraw from this system." Vorthen tried to respond, but found his communication systems had been completely infiltrated and shut down. Around him, his crew was beginning to show signs of neural feedback from the alien transmission method. "Sir," his tactical officer said, voice shaking, "long-range sensors are detecting similar engagements throughout the fleet. The humans appear to have some kind of stealth technology we can't detect or counter. The captain watched in growing horror as the fleet's status indicators showed ship after ship falling silent. These weren't the prolonged battles they'd grown accustomed to with human forces. The special forces were systematically dismantling their fleet with surgical precision. Emergency jump to hyperspace, Vor then ordered. Full retreat. But, when his navigation officer attempted to engage their faster-than-light drive, nothing happened. The human craft had somehow locked down their jump capability without triggering any of the ship's security protocols. The strange ships closed in, and, for the first time in his military career, Captain Vor then found himself completely helpless. His advanced warship, capable of reducing planets to rubble, was being taken apart by forces that operated beyond the realm of conventional physics. The last thing he saw before his ship's power systems failed entirely was one of the human craft materializing directly inside his bridge, its hull simply passing through the destroyer's armor as if it were made of mist. Figures in form-fitting armor emerged, their movements too fluid and precise to be entirely human. News of the 47th Fleet's complete annihilation reached Admiral Kethvar within hours. Of the 47 ships that had been conducting the bombardment, only 5 escape pods had been recovered. The survivors' accounts were dismissed as trauma-induced hallucinations until similar reports began flooding in from across the front lines. Human special forces were appearing throughout Zephyrian-controlled space, using technology that defied every principle of physics the galactic community understood. They struck without warning, using weapons and tactics that rendered centuries of military doctrine obsolete. The Admiral found himself pacing his command center, studying reports that made no sense. Ships that could phase through solid matter. Soldiers who seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that bypassed every known form of defense by attacking targets at the quantum level. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked his aide. "In the past 72 hours? 43 destroyers, 18 cruisers, and 6 dreadnoughts. Total casualties are approaching 30,000. Kethvar felt his confidence cracking. The Zephyrian Empire had never faced an enemy that could inflict such losses while remaining essentially invisible. Their own special forces, the elite Void Hunters, had attempted to track down these human ghosts and simply vanished without a trace. "Sir," Commander ZYXthel approached with another intelligence report. "We've managed to decode another human transmission. It's different from the previous ones." The Admiral took the datapad and read the message. His face went pale as he processed the implications. "What does it say?" his aide inquired. Kethvar looked up from the report, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a communication from human command to their special forces. They're being ordered to withdraw immediately and return to Earth." "A retreat? Perhaps we've inflicted more damage than we thought." "No," the Admiral said, his hands beginning to tremble. "Read the reason for withdrawal. They need to make room for the regular army." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. If the forces that had been systematically destroying their fleet for 3 days were merely the human special forces, what would their regular military be capable of? Commander ZYXthel broke the silence. "Sir, perhaps this is propaganda. An attempt to make us overestimate their capabilities." Kethvar wanted to believe that, but the evidence of the past few days made it impossible. The human special forces had demonstrated technology and tactics so far beyond their understanding that the regular forces might as well have been fighting with sticks and stones. "Send a message to High Command," the Admiral ordered. "Request immediate reinforcement of the entire sector fleet. And..." He paused, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "Begin contingency planning for a strategic withdrawal." The aide stared at him in shock. "Sir, the Zephyrian Empire has never withdrawn from a conquered system. The Zephyrian Empire has never faced humans before." As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the flagship. The defensive grid was detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of Earth. Not the subtle, ghost-like signatures of the special forces, but something far more obvious and infinitely more terrifying. On the long-range sensors, a new fleet was emerging from hyperspace. The The ships were enormous, dwarfing even the Zephyrian dreadnoughts. But it wasn't their size that made Admiral Kethvar's blood run cold. It was their number. Thousands of human vessels filled the sensor display, more ships than the Zephyrian Empire had in their entire navy. And, unlike the Special Forces craft, these ships made no attempt to hide their presence. They announced themselves with energy signatures so powerful they could be detected from multiple star systems away. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, voice cracking with fear, "the lead ships are broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through." The voice that filled the command center was different from the ghostly communications of the Special Forces. This voice was purely human, carrying the weight of authority and barely contained violence. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have invaded our space, enslaved our colonies, and murdered our civilians. Your special forces have had their chance to withdraw peacefully. That offer has expired. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Kethvar tried to respond, but found his communication systems were working perfectly. The humans weren't employing the reality-bending technology of their special forces. They were simply announcing their presence and giving him one chance to avoid what was coming. Looking at the massive fleet arrayed against him, Admiral Kethvar made a decision that would have been unthinkable just a week earlier. He opened a channel to the human fleet. "Admiral Chen, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. We request terms for negotiation." The response came immediately, cold and implacable. "There are no terms. You will withdraw from all human space immediately, or we will remove you." "You don't understand," Kethvar said desperately. "We have superior numbers, advanced technology, centuries of military experience. Your special forces may have caught us off guard," but his words were cut off as every screen in the command center switched to display a single image, a human soldier in standard military armor, standing in what appeared to be a normal troop transport. Nothing special about the equipment, nothing that suggested advanced technology. Admiral Chen's voice continued, "You seem to be under the impression that our special forces represent the pinnacle of human military capability. Allow me to correct that misconception." The image changed to show the same soldier, but now the perspective was different. The camera pulled back to reveal that the transport contained thousands of identical soldiers. Then, it pulled back further, showing the transport was one of hundreds. Then, thousands. "Our special forces," Admiral Chen explained, "represent approximately 0.01% of our total military strength. They are used for surgical strikes and reconnaissance. What you're about to face is not our most advanced soldiers. It's our standard infantry. All 12 billion of them." The display continued to expand, showing massive ships filled with human soldiers. Not exotic warriors with reality-bending technology, but regular people in basic military gear. The sheer scale was impossible to comprehend. "Every human world has a mandatory service requirement," the voice continued. "Every human citizen completes military training. What you've been fighting for 2 years is our defensive militia. What you faced 3 days ago was one squadron of our special forces. What you're facing now is the human war machine at full deployment." Kethvar stared at the display in growing horror. The numbers were impossible. No species could support a military force of that magnitude. Yet the evidence was filling his sensors, thousands upon thousands of ships carrying more soldiers than existed in most galactic civilizations. "This is your final warning," Admiral Chen concluded. "Withdraw immediately, or discover why no species that has threatened humanity has ever required a second lesson." The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian command center in absolute silence. Admiral Kethvar looked around at his officers, seeing his own terror reflected in their faces. In the space of a single week, humanity had transformed from a stubborn but manageable opponent to an existential threat to their entire civilization. For the first time in Zephyrian history, a fleet admiral gave the order to retreat without firing a shot. As his ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's true military might back to the Empire's core worlds, Kethvar couldn't shake the feeling that they had just witnessed the beginning of the end of Zephyrian dominance in the galaxy. Behind them, the human fleet settled into orbit around the liberated worlds, beginning the process of rebuilding what the Zephyrians had destroyed. But their presence served as a constant reminder that humanity was no longer content to simply defend their territory. They were coming for everyone who had made the mistake of threatening their people. The news of Admiral Kethvar's retreat spread through the Zephyrian Empire like a virus. For the first time in their 3-century expansion, an Imperial fleet had withdrawn without engaging the enemy. High Command dismissed the initial reports as cowardice or incompetence, but, as more fleets encountered human forces and suffered devastating defeats, the reality became impossible to ignore. Emperor Vorthake sat in his crystalline throne room, reading report after report of impossible human military capabilities. The throne itself was carved from the compressed remains of the first world his ancestors had conquered, a reminder of Zephyrian superiority. Today, it felt more like a monument to naivety. 12 billion soldiers, he repeated, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. Supreme Commander, explain to me how a species confined to a single star system can field an army larger than our entire population. Supreme Commander Yextal, the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire, stood at attention before the throne. His usual confident demeanor had been replaced by barely concealed fear. Your Imperial Majesty, our analysts believe the humans have militarized their entire civilization. Every citizen appears to be trained for combat from childhood. Impossible. No economy could support such a system. That's what we thought, Your Majesty. But our intelligence indicates that human industrial capacity has been entirely converted to military production. They don't just have soldiers, they have the infrastructure to equip and supply them indefinitely. The Emperor leaned forward, his pale blue skin growing darker with stress. And their technology? Our ships were helpless against their weapons. The Special Forces clearly possess capabilities beyond our understanding. But the regular forces appear to use more conventional technology. The concerning factor is the scale. They don't need exotic weapons when they can field 1,000 ships for every one of ours. Through the throne room's massive windows, the Emperor could see the capital city of Zephyr Prime spreading out below. Gleaming spires reached toward the sky, testament to centuries of conquest and technological advancement. But all of that meant nothing if they couldn't defend it. What about our allies? The Corvan hegemony, the Stellar Syndicate? Supreme Commander Yextal's expression grew even more grave. Your Majesty, they've all received the same message humanity broadcast to us. Complete withdrawal from human space and cessation of all hostile activities, or face military intervention. The Corvans have already agreed to the terms. The Corvans? The Emperor's voice rose in disbelief. They have the second largest fleet in the galaxy. They received a demonstration. A single human ship appeared in orbit above their homeworld and disabled their entire planetary defense grid in under 10 minutes. The ship then transmitted detailed tactical analyses showing how they could destroy every major population center on the planet without any possibility of retaliation. The Corvan High Council voted unanimously to comply with human demands. Emperor Vorthake felt the weight of the galaxy shifting around him. For centuries, the various powers had maintained a delicate balance through mutual destruction. The humans had just proved that balance was an illusion. How many systems have we lost? 47 colonies have been liberated by human forces in the past week. Our commanders report that resistance is futile. The humans don't just outnumber us, they outclass us in every meaningful metric. Firepower, logistics, coordination, technology adaptation. It's as if they've been preparing for this war for generations. The Emperor stood and walked to the great window, staring out at his empire's heart. Perhaps they have been. What do we know about human history? Our Xenoarchaeology division has been analyzing human cultural broadcasts and historical records. Your Majesty, humans appear to be unique among galactic species. They're the only race that achieved spaceflight while still actively engaged in planetary warfare. Meaning? Most species achieve interstellar travel only after unifying their homeworld and eliminating warfare as a social institution. Humans developed their military technology in parallel with their space technology. They've been refining the art of war for their entire existence as a spacefaring civilization. The implications hit the Emperor like a physical blow. While other species had focused on exploration, trade, and peaceful expansion, humans had spent centuries perfecting the science of destruction. Every human colony wasn't just a settlement, it was a military outpost. Every human citizen wasn't just a civilian, they were a potential soldier. How many human worlds are there? Our latest intelligence suggests over 15,000 inhabited systems, not including space habitats, asteroid mining operations, and mobile fleet bases. Your Majesty, humanity isn't just a single system species that got lucky. They're the largest civilization in the galaxy, and we never noticed because they kept quiet until we threatened them. A communication alert chimed through the throne room. Supreme Commander Yextal activated his personal communicator and listened to the urgent message. His face went pale. Your Majesty, Admiral Chen's fleet has entered the Proxima sector. They're approaching our core territories. How many ships? Over 10,000, with more arriving every hour. They're not hiding their approach. Every inhabited system in their path is receiving the same message: evacuate all Zephyrian military personnel and installations immediately. The Emperor turned back to his military commander. And if we refuse? Based on what happened to the 73rd Fleet? Yextal paused, struggling to find words. Your Majesty, Admiral Drexmore's entire fleet was destroyed in 4 minutes. 45 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. Human casualties were 0. 4 minutes? How is that possible? The humans didn't use exotic weapons or special tactics. They simply concentrated overwhelming firepower and coordinated their attack perfectly. Our commanders report that human naval formations move as if controlled by a single mind. No communication delays, no tactical confusion, no hesitation. Emperor Vorthake returned to his throne, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon him. The crystalline seat that had symbolized Zephyrian dominance now felt like a prison. What are our options? We could attempt to negotiate. The humans have demonstrated they're willing to accept surrender rather than total destruction. Several minor civilizations have already been granted autonomy in exchange for recognizing human sovereignty over disputed territories. Sovereignty? Are the humans claiming control over our conquests? More than that, Your Majesty. They're establishing what they call the Terran Protection Zone. Any species that has been threatened by galactic powers can request human protection. Already, 47 different civilizations have signed mutual defense pacts with Earth. The Emperor laughed bitterly. They're building an empire. No, Your Majesty. They're building something much more dangerous. They're building a confederation based on voluntary membership and mutual benefit. Every species that joins becomes part of their military-industrial complex. They're not conquering the galaxy, they're recruiting it. A new communication alert interrupted their conversation. This time, the message came through the throne room's main display system, bypassing all security protocols. Admiral Chen's face appeared, speaking directly to the Emperor of the Zephyrian Empire. Emperor Vorthake, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. Your forces have 48 hours to begin complete withdrawal from all systems containing non-Zephyrian populations. Failure to comply will result in military intervention. Admiral Chen, the Emperor replied, his voice carefully controlled, surely we can discuss terms. The Zephyrian Empire has existed for 3 centuries. We cannot simply abandon everything we've built. You can and you will. Your empire was built through conquest and slavery. Those days are over. You have a choice: retreat to your core systems and rebuild your civilization as a peaceful member of the galactic community, or face the consequences of continued aggression. And if we choose to fight? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change, but something cold entered her eyes. Then, you'll discover why humanity spent 2,000 years perfecting warfare before we reached the stars. Emperor, you've seen what our defensive forces can do. You've witnessed a tiny fraction of our special forces' capabilities. You've observed our regular military in limited engagement. You have not seen what happens when humanity decides that a threat must be permanently neutralized. The transmission continued with a new image, a massive space station, clearly of human construction, surrounded by defensive platforms and patrol ships. This is Fortress Terra, our primary military command center. It coordinates the movements of over 50,000 combat vessels and serves as the headquarters for our Strategic Defense Command. What you're looking at represents less than 10% of our total military infrastructure. The scale was incomprehensible. The station alone was larger than most planetary capitals. The idea that it was merely one facility among many defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about galactic civilization. How? Emperor Vorthak whispered. How did you build something like this without anyone noticing? Because everyone made the same mistake you did. You assumed that a peaceful exterior meant a weak interior. Humanity learned long ago that the best way to maintain peace is to be prepared for war. We spent 1,500 years building this capability while everyone else focused on luxury and expansion. Admiral Chan's image shifted to show star charts displaying human territory. What had been thought of as a single system civilization was revealed as a vast network spanning hundreds of light years. Hidden bases, concealed shipyards, camouflaged fleet anchorages. The humans hadn't been hiding their weakness, they'd been concealing their strength. Every human world is a fortress, Admiral Chen continued. Every human citizen is a soldier. Every human industry is part of our war machine. We built this infrastructure not for conquest, but for protection. You forced us to reveal it. What do you want? The Emperor asked, his voice barely audible. Peace. Real peace, not the temporary ceasefire between predators that the galaxy has been calling peace. We want every species to be free to develop without fear of conquest. We want exploration and trade to replace warfare and exploitation. We want the strong to protect the weak instead of devouring them. And, if we refuse? Then, you'll face the full might of the Terran war machine. Not just the forces you've seen, but capabilities we hope never to use. Emperor, we have weapons that can sterilize entire solar systems. We have ships that can travel through dimensions you can't imagine. We have soldiers who can manipulate reality itself. We've shown you none of these things because we don't want to use them. The transmission paused, letting the implications sink in. But, make no mistake. If you force us to choose between allowing your empire to continue threatening innocent species and deploying our most terrible weapons, we will not hesitate. You're threatening genocide, Supreme Commander Yextal interjected. No, Admiral Chen replied. We're offering you the chance to evolve. Join the galactic community as equals, not conquerors. Help us build a civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. Or... She paused, her expression hardening. Continue on your current path and discover what happens when you threaten a species that has spent millennia learning to defend itself. The transmission ended, leaving the throne room in absolute silence. Emperor Vorthak stared at the blank screen, processing the complete transformation of everything he thought he understood about the galaxy. Your orders, Your Majesty? Supreme Commander Yextal asked quietly. The Emperor looked around his throne room, at the symbols of Zephyrian power and dominance. 3 centuries of conquest, reduced to irrelevance in a single conversation. Begin the withdrawal, he said finally. Issue orders to all fleet commanders, full evacuation of contested systems. No resistance, no delays. And, our military buildup? Our plans for expanding into the Cygnus sector? Cancelled. All of it. The Emperor's voice carried the weight of defeat. We're not dealing with another galactic power that we can outmaneuver or intimidate. We're dealing with something entirely different. Something that makes our entire civilization look like children playing with toys. As Supreme Commander Yextal left to carry out the orders, Emperor Vorthak remained alone in his throne room. Through the great windows, he could see Zephyrian citizens going about their daily lives, unaware that their empire had just ended without a shot being fired. In the distance, new stars appeared in the sky. Human ships, maintaining a respectful distance but making their presence known. A reminder that the galaxy had new protectors, and that the age of conquest was over. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrian Empire's withdrawal from human space, and the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. What had once been a collection of predatory civilizations competing for resources and territory had transformed into something unprecedented, a cooperative network of species working together under human protection. Ambassador Lyraesh of the former Zephyrian Empire stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's newest diplomatic complex. The massive structure orbited a neutral star system, serving as a meeting place for the dozens of species now participating in what humans called the Galactic Cooperative. The irony wasn't lost on her that she, who had once been a proud representative of a conquering empire, was now seeking humanity's guidance on peaceful coexistence. The view from the observation deck showcased the dramatic changes that had swept across the galaxy. Ships from dozens of different species docked at the station's numerous ports, their crews working together on joint projects. Trade vessels that had once traveled under heavy escort now moved freely through space lanes protected by human patrol fleets. Scientific expeditions that would have been impossible during the age of constant warfare were now exploring regions of space that had been abandoned due to conflict. Impressive, isn't it? The voice belonged to Admiral Chen, who had approached without Lyraesh noticing. The human admiral looked remarkably unremarkable for someone who had single-handedly reshaped galactic civilization. She was of average height, with graying hair and tired eyes that held depths Lyraesh was still learning to interpret. Admiral Chen, Lyraesh said, offering the respectful bow that had become customary when addressing humanity's military leaders. I was just observing the changes. You can call me Sarah, Ambassador. We're all equals here. Admiral Chen joined her at the observation window, watching as a Corban science vessel docked alongside a stellar syndicate trading ship. How are your people adjusting? Better than expected, actually. The transition to a civilian economy has been challenging, but our engineers are adapting our military technology for peaceful purposes. Your technical advisors have been. She paused, searching for the right word, generous with their assistance. Generous? Admiral Chen smiled. We're being practical. A prosperous galaxy benefits everyone, including humanity. Besides, your people have impressive engineering capabilities. We'd rather see them used to build than destroy. Lyraesh nodded, though part of her still struggled with the concept. I must admit, Admiral. Sarah. I still don't fully understand human motivations. You could have destroyed our empire completely. Why did you choose to help us rebuild instead? The question had been bothering Lyraesh for months. In her experience, victorious civilizations either enslaved the defeated or eliminated them entirely. Humanity had done neither, instead offering economic assistance, technological sharing, and even military protection to their former enemies. Because that's not who we are, Admiral Chen replied simply. Humans learned a long time ago that permanent victory requires your former enemies to become your friends. Destroying the Zephyrian Empire would have created a power vacuum that someone else would have filled. Helping you transform into peaceful neighbors benefits everyone. But, the cost. The resources you're spending on reconstruction, the technology you're sharing freely, the military assets you're dedicating to protecting former enemies. Surely your own people question these expenditures. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment, watching a group of mixed-species children playing in the station's central park. Their parents, representatives from civilizations that had been at war just months earlier, chatted casually while keeping an eye on the youngsters. Let me tell you something about human history, Ambassador. For most of our existence as a species, we made the same mistakes everyone else in the galaxy was making. We conquered each other, enslaved the defeated, and built empires on the backs of the oppressed. And, you know what we learned? What? It doesn't work. Oh, it might seem successful for a generation or two, but oppression always breeds resistance. Conquered peoples always dream of freedom. Empires built on force always collapse eventually, usually violently. Admiral Chen pointed to a display showing trade statistics flowing through the station's central computer. Look at those numbers. In 6 months, galactic trade volume has increased by 400%. Scientific collaboration has tripled. Resource conflicts have dropped to practically zero. The galaxy is more prosperous and peaceful now than it has been in recorded history. Because of human military power. No, because of human protection making cooperation possible. There's a difference. Admiral Chen turned to face Liraesh directly. We didn't conquer the galaxy, Ambassador. We liberated it. From the cycle of endless warfare, from the fear that kept everyone isolated and suspicious, from the assumption that strength could only be measured by who you could destroy. As if to emphasize her point, alarms began sounding throughout the station. But these weren't war warnings. They were emergency rescue alerts. A civilian transport from the Outer Rim had suffered catastrophic system failures and was drifting powerless in space with 2,000 passengers aboard. Admiral Chen to command, the human spoke into her communicator. Dispatch immediate rescue operations to Sector 77. Full humanitarian response. Already underway, Admiral, came the response. The TDF Mercy and her escort are en route. Estimated arrival in 37 minutes. Liraesh watched the efficient response with growing understanding. The human Terran Defense Force didn't just protect against military threats. They responded to accidents, natural disasters, and any situation where lives were at risk, regardless of the species involved. The transport is from the Rim territories, she observed. They're not even members of your cooperative. Doesn't matter. People are in danger. Admiral Chen spoke as if this was the most obvious thing in the galaxy. We help because we can, not because we have to. Over the station's communication system, updates flowed in as the rescue operation proceeded. The TDF Mercy, one of humanity's massive hospital ships, reached the disabled transport and began emergency evacuation procedures. Other human vessels in the area diverted to assist, coordinating with local authorities to provide whatever support was needed. The Rim territories have been suspicious of human expansion, Liraesh mentioned. They see your growing influence as another form of imperialism. I know. We get that a lot from civilizations that haven't experienced our assistance firsthand. It's understandable, given galactic history. But suspicion fades pretty quickly when you're the one being rescued. The accuracy of that statement was proven over the following hours as the rescue operation unfolded. The Terran Defense Force didn't just evacuate the passengers from the disabled transport. They repaired the ship's systems, provided medical care for the injured, and offered to escort the vessel to its destination to ensure no further problems occurred. Throughout the entire operation, Admiral Chan remained in contact with Rim territory authorities, coordinating the response and keeping them informed of every action taken. When the situation was resolved, human forces withdrew immediately, asking for nothing in return. The transport's captain is requesting permission to speak with you, a communications officer reported to Admiral Chen. Put him through. The viewscreen activated, showing a reptilian being with scales that flickered between blue and green depending on the light. His species was unknown to Liraesh, but his gratitude was universal. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Sethbar of the merchant vessel Wandering Star. We don't know how to thank you. Your people risked their lives to save ours, and we had nothing to offer in return. No thanks necessary, Captain. We're glad everyone is safe. Will your ship be able to reach its destination without further assistance? Yes, your engineers fixed everything. Even improved some systems that have been giving us trouble for years. The captain paused, his emotional state visible in the changing color of his scales. Admiral, I need to ask you something. My government has been telling us that humanity is building an empire, that you'll eventually demand payment for services like this. What do you think, Captain? I think. The reptilian being's scales shifted to a warmer blue color. I think my government doesn't understand what they're talking about. You didn't ask us about politics or territory or trade agreements. You just helped because we needed help. That's what neighbors do, Admiral Chen replied simply. After the transmission ended, Liraesh found herself reassessing everything she thought she understood about power and civilization.
How many rescue operations like this do you conduct? Last month? About 400 major operations, plus thousands of smaller assistance requests. Medical emergencies, natural disasters, equipment failures, navigation problems. If someone needs help and we can provide it, we do. The cost must be enormous. The investment pays for itself.
Every species we help becomes a potential partner. Every life we save is someone who understands that humanity can be trusted.
Every successful rescue is a demonstration that cooperation works better than competition.
Admiral Chen gestured toward the docking bays, where the flow of ships continued unabated.
Do you see any military vessels out there that aren't human?
Liraesh looked more carefully and realized the admiral was right. While ships from dozens of species moved through the station, all the military escorts and patrol vessels were human.
Where are the other fleets?
They're being decommissioned and converted to civilian use. The Corvan hegemony is turning their battleships into cargo haulers.
The Stellar Syndicate is retrofitting their destroyers as research vessels.
Your own people are converting military shipyards to produce exploration craft.
But what if there's a threat? What if some unknown hostile force appears?
Then, they'll face the combined response of the entire galactic cooperative, coordinated and supplied by human military forces.
Admiral Chen's voice carried quiet confidence. We're not just protecting individual species anymore, Ambassador. We're protecting a new way of life. And if humanity decided to become the very threat you're protecting against?
The question hung in the air like a challenge. Liraesh had to ask it, even though she was beginning to understand it was based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature.
Admiral Chen considered the question seriously before answering.
Then, the galaxy would resist us, just like they would resist any other threat. But that's not going to happen, because we've learned the most important lesson in human history. Which is, true strength comes from what you build, not what you destroy. We spent thousands of years fighting each other before we figured that out.
We're not going to make the same mistake on a galactic scale.
As they spoke, another message came through the station's communication system. This time it was from the Rim Territory's government, formally requesting a meeting to discuss joining the Galactic Cooperative. The rescue operation had accomplished what months of diplomacy couldn't achieve.
See? Admiral Chen smiled. That's how you really change the galaxy.
Not through conquest or intimidation, but by demonstrating that there's a better way to live. Liraesh watched the stars through the observation deck windows, seeing them not as targets for conquest but as homes for potential friends. For the first time since her empire's defeat, she felt optimistic about the future.
Sarah, she said quietly, what happens when humanity has converted every civilization in the galaxy to this cooperative model? Then, we keep exploring.
The galaxy is vast, and there are always new challenges, new discoveries, new opportunities to build something better.
Admiral Chen's smile broadened.
Besides, once everyone is working together instead of fighting each other, imagine what we might accomplish. We could explore other galaxies, solve the fundamental mysteries of the universe, build wonders that would make our current achievements look primitive. The thought was intoxicating. A galaxy united not through conquest but through cooperation, its combined resources and intellects focused on exploration and discovery rather than warfare and destruction.
It sounds almost too good to be true. Maybe it is, Admiral Chen admitted. But it's worth trying, don't you think?
The alternative is what we've always had, endless cycles of warfare, conquest, and collapse.
We're offering something new.
Something that has never been attempted on this scale.
And if it fails?
Then, we'll learn from our mistakes and try something else.
That's what humans do. We keep trying until we get it right.
As Liraesh prepared to return to her quarters, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this point. 6 months ago, she had been part of an empire that measured success by how many worlds it could conquer. Now she was part of a cooperative that measured success by how many lives it could improve. The transformation hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. And, as she looked out at the peaceful bustle of Harmony Station, she began to understand that humanity hadn't just defeated the old galactic order. They had replaced it with something infinitely better. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And, for the first time in galactic history, the future looked brighter than the past.